The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss. Ambassador took a deep breath and stepped onto the black stone platform of Prime. The air was cold and thin. It smelled strange, like metal and old leaves. She had trained for this moment for 5 years. She had studied every report, every video, every tiny piece of information about but nothing could truly prepare a human for meeting apex predators face to face. Behind her, Lieutenant checked his equipment one more time. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and calm eyes. He had served in 3 different conflicts across human space. He had faced pirates, rebels, and hostile aliens, but even he felt his heart beating faster as he looked at what waited for them on the platform. They stood in a line. There were 5 of them. They were huge. The smallest one was at least 2.5 meters tall. The largest was close to 3 meters. Their bodies were covered in dark blue scales that seemed to drink in the pale light from the twin suns above. Their arms were long and ended in hands with 4 fingers. Each finger had a curved claw that looked sharp enough to cut through metal. But it was their heads that made humans freeze in fear. They had faces like nightmares. Their skulls were long and narrow. Their eyes were the color of hot copper with vertical pupils like a cat, and their jaws were filled with rows of serrated teeth. Not just 1 row, 3 rows. When it opened its mouth, it looked like a cave of knives. Walked forward with steady steps. She kept her back straight and her eyes forward. She knew the respected strength. They respected those who did not show fear. Every report said the same thing. Show weakness and they will treat you like prey. Show strength and they might treat you like an equal. The lead stepped forward. He was the biggest of them all. His scales were darker than the others, almost black in places. A long scar ran across his snout from his left eye down to his jaw. He wore a collar of golden metal around his thick neck. This was Hai Fang, the leader of the diplomatic council. Began to circle the 2 humans. His footsteps were heavy, and his claws made clicking sounds on the stone floor. He moved slowly, taking his time. His copper eyes examined every detail of the small, soft creatures before him. Did not move. She did not turn to follow him with her eyes. She simply stood still and waited. Beside her did the same. His hand wanted to move toward his weapon. Every instinct in his body screamed that a predator was circling him, but he kept his hands at his sides. Completed his circle and stopped in front of. He leaned down, bringing his massive head close to hers. His jaws parted slightly, and she could see those terrible teeth. She could smell his breath. It was hot and carried the scent of raw meat. Humans said. The translator device on his collar turned his growling words into something she could understand. Small, soft, no claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom. He snorted and hot air washed over her face. You have nothing. Why should the treat with prey? Had prepared for this question. She had rehearsed her answer 100 times. But now, standing in front of this monster, she found that the rehearsed words felt wrong. They felt weak. So she threw them away and spoke from her heart instead. Hai Fang, she said, and her voice was steady. You are right. We have no claws, we have no fangs. Our skin is soft and our bodies are small. On Earth, where we come from, we were hunted by creatures much like you. Great cats with teeth as long as knives. Wolves that hunted in packs. Bears that could crush a human with 1 blow. She paused and looked directly into those copper eyes. That was 3 million years ago. The cats are gone. The wolves live only because we allow them to live. The bears survive in small numbers in protected areas. And humans, we spread across our entire world. Then we left our world and spread across the stars. His eyes narrowed. The other behind him were very still. They were listening. We are prey, continued. You are correct, but we are prey that learn to think, prey that learn to build, prey that learn to fight back. We are still here, Hai Fang. Can you say the same about everything that once hunted us? The silence stretched for a long moment. Could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. She could feel tension beside her. The other had not moved. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. Then's throat began to vibrate. A low, rumbling sound came from deep in his chest. His jaws opened wider and that sound grew louder. His translator struggled for a moment, then offered a single word: laughter. "Bold words," said when the rumbling stopped. "Bold words from soft meat. Perhaps there is something to you humans after all. We shall see if your words have substance." He straightened up and gestured with one clawed hand. "Come, we have prepared quarters for you. You will rest. Tomorrow the real talks begin." As they followed across the platform toward the towering black buildings in the distance, leaned close to. "That was not the speech you rehearsed," he whispered. "No," she admitted, "it was not. It was better." She allowed herself a small smile. "Let us hope so." But as they walked, noticed something. One of them had not joined the others. A smaller one, younger by the look of his brighter scales. He stood at the edge of the platform, and he was staring at the humans with an expression that was not curiosity. It was hostility, pure and undisguised. The young's lips pulled back slightly, showing just a hint of those serrated teeth. His claws flexed at his sides. He looked at the humans the way a hunter looks at prey that has not yet realized it is being stalked. Filed this observation away in her mind. She would need to learn more about this young one. She had a feeling he would be trouble. She was right. The diplomatic quarters were inside a massive structure made of the same black stone as the landing platform. The rooms were large and mostly empty. They did not seem to use much furniture. There were no chairs, no beds in the human sense, just raised platforms covered with something that felt like thick leather. Dr. The Missions was already there. She had arrived on an earlier shuttle with the equipment and supplies. She was a small woman with quick eyes and hands that never stopped moving. She was always taking notes, always observing, always trying to understand. "Ambassador," she said as entered, "how was the welcome?" "Intense," replied, "but I think we made a good first impression." "They are fascinating," said, pulling up data on her tablet. "I have been watching their behavior since we arrived. Everything is about dominance. The way they stand, the way they move, even the way they breathe. Every action is a statement of power." "We noticed," said dryly. "The big one circled us like we were dinner." "That is exactly what he was doing," confirmed. "In culture, circling is a dominance display. By standing still and not reacting, you pass the first test. If you had backed away or shown fear, they would have lost all respect for you." Sat down on one of the raised platforms. It was surprisingly comfortable. There was a young one, smaller than the others, brighter scales. He did not come with us. He just stood there and watched. Nodded slowly. "Yes, I have seen him too. That is, he is son." "The leader's son." "Yes, and from what I can tell, he is what they call unblooded. He has not yet made his first kill. In their society, that means he has no status. He is still a child in their eyes, even though he is physically mature." Crossed his arms. "A frustrated teenager with claws and teeth. Wonderful." "It is more than frustration," said. "For though being unblooded is shameful, is the son of the High Fang, there are expectations, pressure. He needs to prove himself and he needs to do it soon. An opportunity like this diplomatic mission with strange new creatures visiting his world." She paused. "He might see us as his chance." Understood immediately. He might try to challenge us. "It is possible. To prove themselves through dominance and combat. We represent something new, something unknown. If he could dominate a human, force one of us to submit, it might be the achievement he needs." The room fell quiet. Outside the window, the twin suns of Prime were beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "Then we need to be careful," said finally. "All of us. No one goes anywhere alone. We stay together, we stay calm, and we do not give him an opportunity." But even as she spoke the words, she knew that some opportunities could not be avoided, and some challenges had to be faced. The first night on Prime passed slowly. 3 days passed on Prime. The diplomatic talks were going slowly, but they were going. Hai Feng was a difficult negotiator. He pushed hard on every point. He demanded much and offered little, but he was fair. When made a good argument, he listened. When she presented evidence, he considered it. The process was exhausting, but it was progress. The human delegation had settled into a routine. Mornings were spent preparing for the day's negotiations. Afternoons were spent in the meeting hall with the council. Evenings were spent reviewing what had happened and planning for the next day. Doctor spent most of her time observing and taking notes. She watched the guards. She watched the servants who brought food. She watched the way different interacted with each other. Every day she learned something new. Their hierarchy is very strict, she explained one evening. Every knows exactly where they stand in relation to every other. There are constant small tests, a look, a gesture, the way someone positions their body. It is all communication. Anne asked. She had not forgotten about the young one. Pulled up her tablet and showed a series of images. They were captured from the security cameras around their quarters. In each image, the young was visible. Sometimes he was standing in the shadows across the courtyard. Sometimes he was walking past their windows. Sometimes he was just watching from a distance. He is getting closer, said. Every day a little closer. He is testing the boundaries, seeing how we react. Looked at the images with a soldier's eye. He is hunting us. This is stalking behavior. I believe so, yes. He is building up to something, a confrontation. I think he is trying to decide which of us to target. The room fell silent. There were 5 humans in the delegation. Was the ambassador protected by diplomatic status? Was the security officer obviously capable of defending himself? Was the scientist older and clearly in a position of knowledge? That left 2 others. Myra was the communications officer. She was in her 30s, confident and professional. She had served in difficult postings before and knew how to handle herself. And then there was the youngest member of the team. He was only 22 years old. He was an engineering specialist, brought along to study technology. He was brilliant with machines and systems, but he was not a soldier. He was not a diplomat. He was a quiet young man with gentle eyes and a nervous habit of touching his nose when he was uncomfortable. Looked at now. He was sitting in the corner, reviewing technical specifications on his tablet. He had not been paying attention to the conversation about. He did not know that he was probably the target. We need to keep protected, said quietly. He should not be alone, not ever. I can assign myself to watch him, offered. No, you are needed in the negotiations. Your presence reminds them that we are not completely helpless. Thought for a moment. Can you stay with, say you need his help with your research? Nodded. I can do that. He actually would be helpful. He understands systems better than I do. Good, then that is what we will do. But plans do not always work, and predators are patient. On the 4th day, the talks ran longer than expected. There was a difficult point about trade routes that required careful negotiation. Was being stubborn. The hours stretched on. Back at the quarters was called away. One of the scientists wanted to show her something in their medical facility. It was an important opportunity, a chance to learn about biology. She hesitated, looking at. I will be fine, said with a small smile. I am just going to stay here and work on these technical documents. Nothing will happen. Was not comfortable leaving him, but the opportunity was too important. They almost never allowed outsiders into their medical facilities. This could be her only chance. Stay inside, she said. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone except us. Nodded. I understand. Go do your science. Left, locked the door as he had promised. He went back to his tablet and continued his work. The technical specifications of power systems were fascinating. They used a form of energy that humans had only theorized about. If he could understand how it worked, it could revolutionize human technology. An hour passed. then, too, became lost in his work. He did not notice the shadow that passed by the window. He did not notice the soft sound of claws on stone outside. The door to the common room was strong. It was made of heavy metal, designed to withstand almost anything. But it was not locked from the outside. It was only locked from the inside, and had been very focused on his work. Had he remembered to engage the lock after left? He had meant to. He was almost certain he had. But now, looking at the door, he was not sure. Before he could stand up to check, the door burst open. Stood in the doorway. He was even more terrifying up close than he had been from a distance. His scales seemed to glow with inner heat. His copper eyes were fixed on with an intensity that made the young human's blood turn cold. The ridge along his spine was fully raised, standing up like a row of blades. His claws were extended. Every part of his body screamed one message: threat. "Human!" roared. The sound was so loud that felt it in his chest. His tablet fell from his hands and clattered on the floor. The young stepped into the room. Each step was slow and deliberate. He was savoring this moment. He had waited days for this opportunity. He had watched and planned. And now, finally, he had caught one of the soft creatures alone. "You sit in the presence of," snarled. "You sit like you belong here, like you are our equal, but you are not our equal. You are nothing." Stumbled backward. His legs hit the edge of a raised platform and he almost fell. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Every instinct in his body told him to run. But there was nowhere to run. Was between him and the door. "Look at you," the young predator continued, moving closer. "You tremble, you shake. I can smell your fear. It is coming off you in waves. You are prey. You are weak. You are pathetic." Tried to speak, but no words came out. His throat was tight with terror. His lips pulled back in what might have been a smile if it were not so terrifying. "On our world, the weak do not sit with the strong. The weak do not stand. The weak crawl." He lunged forward, jaws snapping shut just inches from his face. The sound of those teeth coming together was like a trap closing. Cried out and fell backward onto the platform. Laughed. It was a harsh, cruel sound. "Yes, that is better. Show me your fear, little human. Show me what prey looks like when it knows it is going to die." His mind was racing. He had no weapons. He had no training for combat. He was an engineer, not a soldier. What could he do against a creature like this? Nothing. There was nothing he could do. Leaned closer. His breath was hot on his face. Those terrible teeth were right there, close enough to touch. "I am going to show my father," the young said, his voice dropping to a growl. "I am going to show the whole council what humans really are. Weak, soft, afraid. You are nothing but prey pretending to be people, and I will prove it." Closed his eyes. He could not bear to look at those teeth any longer. His whole body was shaking. He could feel tears forming in his eyes. And then something else happened. The cold air of Prime had been bothering since they arrived. It was dry and carried strange particles that irritated his nose. He had been fighting against it for days, constantly sniffing, constantly trying to clear his sinuses. He had managed to control it during the day, but now, with all this stress, with this terror flooding through his body, his control slipped. His nose began to tickle. It started small, just a slight sensation, but it grew quickly. His nostrils twitched. His eyes watered more. His chest expanded involuntarily as his body prepared for something it could not stop. His eyes flew open, just as his body jerked forward. HFY. It was not a small sneeze. It was not a polite sneeze. It was a massive explosion of air and sound that erupted from his face with tremendous force. A fine spray of moisture shot forward, directly into his face. The young recoiled as if he had been struck. His threat display collapsed instantly. His raised spine flattened. His extended claws retracted. His eyes went so wide that the copper seemed to glow even brighter. He made a sound that had never heard before. A high-pitched wheeze followed by a choking gasp. His jaws opened and closed, but no roar came out, just that strange, gasping sound. And then fell. The massive predator who had been threatening to kill just moments ago collapsed onto the floor. His body began to shake. That wheezing, gasping sound continued, growing louder and more intense. Sat frozen on the platform, not understanding what was happening. Had the sneeze been somehow poisonous? Was dying. I am sorry, stammered, tears still running down his face. I did not mean to, I could not stop it. Please do not die. But was not listening. He had rolled onto his back, his massive clawed hands clutching at his stomach. The wheezing sound had changed. It was coming faster now in short bursts. His whole body shook with each burst. And then realized the truth. Was not dying. Was laughing. The fearsome predator, the unblooded son of the High Fang, the creature who had been about to tear apart, was lying on the floor laughing so hard he could not get up. Every time he seemed to recover, he would look at his tear-streaked, confused face, and a fresh wave of laughter would overtake him. He gasped. He wheezed. He made sounds that would never have believed could come from a. The door burst open again. Rushed in, weapon drawn, followed by and the others. They had heard the commotion. They had come running. They stopped in the doorway, staring at the scene before them. Sat on the platform, face wet with tears and snot. Lay on the floor, convulsing with laughter. What? Looked from one to the other. What happened here? Could only shrug helplessly. I sneezed on him. The common room had become very crowded. Stood near the door, her mind racing as she tried to understand what she was seeing. Had lowered his weapon but kept it ready. Had arrived moments after the others, having received an emergency message on her communicator. She was now kneeling beside, her scanner active, studying the young with intense focus. Myra was standing with one hand on his shoulder to comfort him. The young engineer was still shaking. His face was still wet. He kept looking at with an expression of pure confusion. I do not understand, said for the third time. I just sneezed. That is all I did. I sneezed. Had mostly stopped laughing. He lay on his back taking deep breaths. Occasionally a small wheeze would escape him and his body would shake with a brief chuckle, but he was calming down. Slowly. Looked up from her scanner. His vital signs are returning to normal. Elevated heart rate but within safe parameters. He is not in any danger. She paused, looking at the data with wonder in her eyes. He really was just laughing, nothing else, just pure, uncontrolled laughter. But why? Asked. What could possibly be so funny about a sneeze? Stood up and walked over to where was sitting. She looked at him thoughtfully. Can you describe exactly what happened? Every detail. Nodded shakily. He came in, he was threatening me, saying I was weak, that humans were prey. He wanted me to crawl. He snapped his jaws at my face. He touched his nose unconsciously. And then, I could not stop it. The sneeze just happened. It was a big one, and it got on his face. Turned back to look at. The young had finally sat up. He was leaning against the wall, still breathing heavily. His copper eyes moved from human to human, but there was no hostility in them now. Just something that looked almost like wonder. Said carefully, can you tell us why you were laughing? The young was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was different than before. The aggression was gone. He sounded almost confused himself. I do not know, he admitted. I have never experienced anything like that. The sound he made, the way his face changed, and then the air coming out of his nose, the spray. He made that wheezing sound again, fighting off another wave of laughter. It was the strangest thing I have ever seen. I could not control my reaction. My body just responded. His eyes lit up with understanding. She turned to, Ambassador, I think I know what happened. The do not sneeze. What do you mean? I mean their bodies are not capable of it. Their respiratory system is completely different from ours. They do not have the reflex. They have never seen anything like it before. She gestured at. For him, watching sneeze was like like watching a creature's face explode for no reason. It was so unexpected, so strange that his brain could not process it as a threat. Instead, it processed it as absurd. Lowered his weapon completely. So he laughed because it looked ridiculous to him. Exactly, think about it. From his perspective, he was in complete control. He was dominating. He was about to prove his strength. And then suddenly, without any warning, this tiny human makes the strangest sound imaginable and sprays liquid from his face. All of his predator instincts were focused on threat and submission. The sneeze was neither. It was just silly. Began to understand. In human terms, it would be like preparing for a serious fight and then having your opponent suddenly do a silly dance. The contrast between expectation and reality was so extreme that laughter was the only possible response. "But do laugh," she said. "We have seen laugh." "Yes, but laughter is always connected to dominance," explained. "They laugh when they win. They laugh when prey fails to escape. Their humor is cruel. It is about power." She looked at with fascination. But this was different. This was innocent. This was pure surprise and absurdity. I do not think experience that very often, if ever. Was watching this conversation with great interest. He had never heard anyone analyze behavior like this. The human scientist was speaking truths that he had never considered. "You are correct," he said slowly. "We do not laugh at silly things. We laugh at weakness. We laugh at defeat. We laugh at the foolishness of others when it gives us advantage." He paused, struggling to find words. But the sneeze was not weakness. It was not defeat. It was just strange, and I could not stop laughing at how strange it was. The room fell quiet as everyone absorbed this information. Something important had just happened. Something that might change everything about this diplomatic mission. Stepped forward and knelt down so she was at eye level with the young. He was still sitting against the wall, looking up at her. She said gently, "You came here to challenge to prove your dominance, to show that humans are weak." She held his gaze steadily. "Do you still believe that humans are just prey?" The young was silent for a long moment. His copper eyes moved to who was still sitting on the platform, still looking confused and scared. Small, soft, no claws, no fangs, everything that the considered weak. "And yet, I do not know what I believe anymore," admitted. "I thought I understood strength. I thought I understood what it meant to be powerful, but this human," he shook his head slowly. "He defeated me without even trying. He was not fighting. He was not even defending himself. He just made a noise and I fell down laughing like a newborn pup." Found his voice. "I did not defeat you. I just sneezed. I could not help it." "That is what makes it so strange," said. "You did nothing, and yet you changed everything. I came here to prove that I am strong. Instead, I learned that maybe strength is not what I thought it was." Before anyone could respond, there was a commotion outside. Heavy footsteps approached. A deep voice called out in the language. Appeared in the doorway. The high fang filled the entire frame. His copper eyes swept across the room, taking in every detail. Humans standing around. His son sitting on the floor, the tension in the air. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded. His voice was like thunder. "I received reports of a disturbance. I find my son on the floor among humans. Explain." Scrambled to his feet. He stood as tall as he could, but he was still much smaller than his father. His scales had lost their brightness. He looked like what he was, a young one who had been caught doing something wrong. "Father, You entered their quarters without permission," continued, his voice cold. "You challenged them, you threatened them, you put our diplomatic mission at risk." Each word was like a blow. "You shame me, you shame our clan." The young's head dropped. His whole body seemed to shrink, felt something like sympathy for him. Yes, he had been aggressive. Yes, he had been dangerous, but he was still young. He was still trying to find his place in a society that demanded dominance and strength. Hai Fang said, stepping forward, "If I may speak." His burning eyes turned to her. "Speak." Your son did come here with hostile intentions. That is true, but what happened here was not what any of us expected. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We learned something today, something important about the differences between our species, something that might actually help our negotiations. His expression did not change, but his eyes showed a flicker of interest. Explain. Looked at who was still sitting on the platform. The young engineer's face was red with embarrassment, but he understood what the ambassador wanted. He gave a small, uncomfortable nod. Our has a physical reflex that do not possess, said. When his nose is irritated, he sneezes. It is involuntary, it cannot be controlled, and it appears to be the funniest thing have ever witnessed. His ridge began to rise slightly. The funniest. Perhaps a demonstration would be useful. Looked at. Doctor, do you have that packet of ground pepper? Reached into her medical kit and pulled out a small container. She walked over to and opened it near his face. The fine particles drifted up toward his nose. His eyes began to water, his nostrils twitched, his chest expanded. HFY. The sneeze echoed through the room. Grabbed for a cloth to cover his face, but it was too late. The damage was done. Stared, his jaws had fallen open slightly. His ridge was fully raised now, but not in threat. His throat began to vibrate. The High Fang of Prime, the most powerful predator on the planet, the leader of the diplomatic council, was fighting against laughter. He lost the fight. His laughter was deeper and louder than his son's. It seemed to shake the walls. He doubled over, one massive clawed hand bracing against the doorframe. The sound that came from him was unlike anything the humans had ever heard from a. It was genuine. It was surprised. It was completely, utterly delighted. By the first hunt, managed to gasp between waves of laughter. What was that? Was laughing again too, standing beside his father, the shame and fear forgotten. For this moment, they were not High Fang and unblooded son. They were just two sharing in something completely new. Was recording everything. This was historic. This was unprecedented. This might be the most important scientific discovery of the mission. When finally composed himself, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, he looked at with new respect. Ambassador, he said, his voice still thick with lingering amusement, I believe we have much more to discuss, but first, he looked at with what might have been affection. Can your human do that again? Word spread faster than anyone expected. Society was built on hierarchy and competition, but it was also built on gossip. News traveled from ear to ear, from clan to clan, from city to city. Within 2 days, everyone on Prime knew about the human who had made the High Fang laugh. The stories grew with each telling. Some said the human had used a secret weapon. Others said he had cast a spell. A few claimed that humans could explode their faces at will and use the pieces as projectiles. The truth was stranger than any of these stories, and that only made people more curious. Noticed the change immediately. The guards who had been cold and distant now looked at the humans with something like curiosity. The servants who brought their food lingered longer, watching, waiting. Even the council members seemed less hostile during negotiations. But it was Myra who first realized how significant the change was. Ambassador, she said one morning, looking at her communication device with wide eyes, I am receiving requests, many requests. What kind of requests? High-ranking clan leaders, military commanders, they want to visit our quarters. She scrolled through the messages. They want to see the human explosion. Blinked the what? That is what they are calling it, the human explosion, the sneeze. Looked up from her research. This is remarkable. They have strict protocols about visiting foreign delegations. The fact that they are breaking those protocols just to see something they find amusing. It shows how powerful the effect is. Leaned against the wall, arms crossed. So we have become entertainment. Is that good or bad? It depends on how we use it, said slowly. Her diplomatic mind was already working on the possibilities. If leaders are willing to come here to interact with us outside of formal negotiations, we might be able to build relationships. Real relationships, not just political agreements. But we cannot just make Sneeze on command, Myra pointed out. He is not a performing animal. Who had been quiet through this conversation finally spoke. Actually, the pepper works quite well, and the cold air makes my nose sensitive anyway. I could probably sneeze whenever needed. Everyone looked at him. You would do that? Asked. Sneeze for visitors, it could be many times, many visitors. Shrugged if it helps the mission, and honestly, a small smile appeared on his face. It is nice to be useful. I am not a diplomat or a scientist or a soldier. I am just an engineer. But this is something I can do, something only I can do. Smiled warmly. You are contributing more than you know. What you did has changed everything. That afternoon, they received their first visitor. His name was Clan Leader. He was nearly as large as, with scales that had turned silver with age. He brought with him a gift of precious metals and a formal declaration of respect for the human delegation. He also brought his entire extended family. 12 crowded into the common room. They ranged in size from massive elders to young ones barely taller than. Their copper eyes were fixed on the humans with barely contained excitement. Approached with the formal bow that used for equals. This was significant. Before the sneeze incident, he probably would not have bowed at all. Ambassador, he said through the translator, I have heard stories, many stories. I must see for myself if they are true. Gestured toward. Our engineer would be happy to demonstrate. Stepped forward. He was nervous, but he had practiced this. Handed him the small container of pepper. He opened it and inhaled gently near the edge. The familiar tickle began. His nose twitched. His eyes watered. Yhoo. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The younger collapsed almost instantly, their high-pitched wheezing filling the room. Even ancient and dignified could not maintain his composure. His throat vibrated. His jaws opened. The sound that came from him was pure, surprised joy. Again, one of the young ones called out, Please, again. Obliged. The second sneeze was even bigger than the first. The room erupted in chaos. Were falling over each other, clutching their stomachs, making sounds that no human had ever heard from the predator species. When it was over, when the visitors had finally composed themselves, approached directly, the old clan leader knelt down so he could look the human in the eyes. Little human, he said, and there was wonder in his voice. In all my years, I have never experienced anything like this. We pride ourselves on strength, on dominance, on never showing weakness. He paused. But you have shown me something new, something I did not know I was missing. Did not know what to say. I just sneezed. No, you did more than that. You made me feel something clean, something without cruelty or competition, just joy pure and simple. Stood up and turned to Ambassador. I came here skeptical. I came here because I was curious, but now I leave as your ally. Whatever support you need in the council, you have it. After left, more visitors came. Day after day, of all ranks arrived at the human quarters. Some came with gifts. Some came with questions. All of them came to see the sneeze. Documented everything. She recorded the reactions of hundreds of. She noted how different individuals responded. The sounds they made, the physical changes in their bodies, the things they said afterward. This is more than just a funny reaction, she explained one evening as the team gathered for dinner. They are experiencing something their culture has never given them, innocent humor, laughter without cruelty. What do you mean? Asked. In society, everything is competitive. Even humor is about dominance. They laugh at others, not with others. They find amusement in weakness and failure. Pulled up her data. But the sneeze is different. It is not weak. It is not failure. It is just strange and unexpected. When they laugh at it, they are not laughing at. They are laughing at something completely outside their experience. And that changes things? Asked. I believe it changes everything. The visitors who have come here, they leave different. They speak about humans differently. They treat us differently. The sneeze has given them a new way to connect with us, one that is not based on threat or submission. Had become a regular presence in their quarters. After the incident, his father had assigned him to be the human cultural liaison. It was meant to be a punishment, but did not see it that way. He was fascinated by the humans, by all of them. He especially liked talking to. The two young ones spent hours together, would ask questions about human life, human customs, human biology, would answer as best he could, and sometimes, when asked nicely, would sneeze. I do not understand, said one day. Why does the sneeze happen? What purpose does it serve? Thought about it. It clears our nose. When there are particles or irritants inside, the sneeze pushes them out. It keeps us healthy. So it is a defense mechanism. In a way, yes. Considered this. Among my people, defense mechanisms are serious things. Claws, teeth, venom, they are weapons. He made the small coughing sound that had learned was amusement. But your defense mechanism is the funniest thing I have ever seen. Perhaps humans are not so soft after all. Perhaps you simply fight in ways we cannot understand. Smiled, perhaps we do. On the 7th day since the sneeze incident, Hai Fang called a special meeting of the council, was invited to attend, along with her entire delegation. This was unusual. Normally, only the ambassador participated in council meetings. The council chamber was vast. Massive stone pillars held up a ceiling lost in shadow. The council members sat in a circle, their copper eyes reflecting the light from torches along the walls. In the center of the circle was an empty space where speakers would stand. Rose from his seat and moved to the center. His voice echoed through the chamber. Council members, clan leaders, warriors of Prime, we gather today to discuss an unusual matter. He paused, his eyes moving across the assembled. We have all heard the stories. Many of us have witnessed the truth of those stories ourselves. The humans have brought something to our world, something we did not expect. He turned and gestured toward. This small human has an ability, a simple biological reflex that his species possesses, and this reflex has done something remarkable. It has made us laugh. A murmur went through the council. Some of the older members looked uncertain, but many others were nodding, their eyes bright with memory. I have led our people for 40 years, continued. I have won great victories. I have defeated powerful enemies. I have brought honor to our species. He paused, and his voice became softer. But I have never felt what I felt when that human sneezed in front of me. Joy without conquest, amusement without cruelty, laughter that was shared rather than taken. He looked at Ambassador, stepped forward, walked to the center of the chamber, standing beside the massive predator. She felt small next to him, but she no longer felt afraid. They have been isolated for too long, said. We have treated all other species as either threats or prey. We have closed ourselves off from the galaxy. He placed one massive clawed hand on shoulder, gentle despite its size. Perhaps it is time for that to change. Perhaps these humans can teach us something we have forgotten, or perhaps something we never knew. He turned back to the council. I propose that we accelerate the diplomatic process. I propose that we sign a treaty of alliance with Earth. I propose that we open our world to human visitors, teachers, and friends. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some council members objected, others spoke in support. The debate went on for hours. But in the end, Swill prevailed. The Treaty of Alliance would be signed, and it all started with a sneeze. The day of the treaty signing arrived with clear skies and a gentle wind. Both sons of Prime hung low on the horizon, painting the black stone buildings in shades of gold and orange. It was, by standards, a beautiful day, a perfect day for making history. The ceremony was held in the great plaza at the center of the capital city. Thousands of had gathered to witness the event. They stood in rows along the edges of the plaza, their scales catching the light, their copper eyes fixed on the raised platform where the signing would take place. Ambassador stood before a table made of polished black stone. Beside her stood her entire delegation, was in his formal uniform, standing straight and proud, had her tablet ready to record every moment for scientific posterity. Myra was managing communications, ensuring that the ceremony was being broadcast to Earth and across the galaxy, and stood among them, looking more nervous than ever but also somehow more confident. Across the table stood Hai Fang with at his side. The young had changed over the past 2 weeks. He stood taller now. His scales had grown brighter. He no longer looked like an unblooded youth desperate to prove himself. He looked like someone who had found his purpose. Behind stood the entire council. Clan leader was among them, his silver scales distinctive against the darker hues of the others. He caught his eye and gave a small nod of respect. Raised his clawed hand for silence. The murmuring crowd fell quiet. People of Prime, the Hai Fang began, his voice carrying across the plaza. We gather today to mark a new chapter in our history. For generations, we have lived alone. We have trusted no one. We have seen all outsiders as enemies or prey. He paused, letting his words sink in. But the universe is vast, and we have learned that it contains wonders we never imagined. He turned to look at the humans. These small, soft creatures came to us from a distant world called Earth. They have no claws, they have no fangs. By all our measures, they should be prey. And yet they are not. They have survived. They have thrived. They have spread across the stars. A ripple of agreement went through the crowd. Many of them had heard this argument before. Many of them had experienced the truth of it firsthand. But more than that, continued, they have shown us something about ourselves. They have given us a gift, a simple thing, a biological reflex that they cannot control, and this simple thing has changed everything. He looked at directly. One human sneeze did more for peace than 100 diplomatic sessions. It taught us that there is joy beyond victory, laughter beyond cruelty, connection beyond dominance. Picked up a stylus made of golden metal. And so, on behalf of the people, I sign this treaty of alliance with Earth. May it be the first of many bonds between our species. He pressed the stylus to the document, leaving his mark in the traditional way. Stepped forward with her own signing device. On behalf of the United Earth Government and all the peoples of humanity, I accept this treaty. We come not as conquerors or subjects, but as friends, partners, perhaps in time family. She added her signature to the document. The crowd erupted in celebration. The sound was overwhelming, a mixture of roars and that wheezing laughter that humans had come to recognize as joy. Claws stomped on stone. Voices called out in triumph. When the noise finally died down, spoke again. As part of this treaty, we have agreed to establish a cultural exchange center on Prime. Humans will come here to teach us about their customs, their humor, their unique way of seeing the universe. He paused, and something like a smile crossed his fearsome features. There is only one person who can lead such a center, someone who has already done more for human relations than any diplomat in history. All eyes turned to. The young engineer's face went red. His hands fidgeted at his sides. He looked out with panic in his eyes. Smiled and nodded. They had discussed this possibility, had been reluctant at first, but he had come to understand how important this role could be. I am honored, managed to say, his voice smaller than he would have liked. I never thought that a sneeze could change the galaxy, but I suppose that is what makes humans human. We never know what small thing might make a big difference. The crowd made approving sounds. Even the doubtful council members seemed moved by his words. Then stepped forward. The young had been quiet throughout the ceremony, but now he had something to say. I was the first, he announced. I was the first to witness the human sneeze. I was the first to laugh. He looked at with warmth in his copper eyes, and I was changed by it. I came to these humans as an enemy. I came to prove my dominance. Instead, I found something better. I found a friend." He knelt down so he was at eye level with, "Human friend, I asked to be your partner in this exchange center. I want to help our peoples understand each other. I want to be the bridge between and humans." Blinked, he had not expected this. But looking at the sincerity in those copper eyes, he felt something shift inside him. A week ago, this creature had been trying to kill him. Now they were going to work together. "I would like that very much," said. The plaza erupted in celebration again, but this time the roars were mixed with something else. That wheezing, gasping sound. Laughter, pure, innocent laughter. Later that evening, after the ceremony was over and the dignitaries had departed, the human delegation gathered in their quarters one last time. Tomorrow, most of them would return to Earth. Only would stay behind. Raised a glass of wine. It was strong and tasted like berries mixed with something sharp. To the strangest diplomatic mission in human history. To the sneeze that saved the day, added with a grin. To understanding between species, said, raising her own glass. To Myra said, the most unlikely hero humanity has ever produced. His face was red again, but he raised his glass along with the others. To all of us, we came here not knowing what would happen. We leave having changed the galaxy. I am proud to have been part of this team. They drank together. Outside, the twin suns had set, and the night sky of Prime was filled with unfamiliar stars. But somehow, those stars did not seem so alien anymore. A knock came at the door, entered looking almost nervous. He carried something in his clawed hands. "I hope I am not intruding," he said. "I wanted to give something before the others leave." He held out a small object. It was a pendant made of dark metal, shaped like a claw curled around a human hand. On one side was inscribed a symbol that did not recognize. "It is the mark of eternal friendship," explained. "My people do not give this lightly. In all our history, it has never been given to an outsider." He placed the pendant in his hands. "But you are not an outsider, not anymore. You are the human who taught the to laugh. You are the bridge between our worlds." Held the pendant carefully. It was warm to the touch. "Thank you, I will wear it always." "And I have a request," the young added. His voice dropped to something almost like a whisper. "Before the others go, could you, one more time?" Laughed, a real laugh, free and easy. He reached for the pepper container that had become such an important part of this mission. "For you, my friend, always." He opened the container, breathed in the fine particles, felt his nose begin to tickle. HFY. Collapsed to the floor, wheezing and laughing, his massive body shaking with joy. The other humans joined in, their human laughter mixing with the sounds until it was impossible to tell them apart. And somewhere out in the galaxy, other species would hear the story. Other worlds would wonder about these strange humans who could not fight with claws or teeth, but who could somehow make the most fearsome predators in the known universe laugh until they cried. Some species would think it was a weakness. They would be wrong. Because the greatest strength of humanity was never its weapons or its technology. It was its ability to connect, to find common ground with anyone, to take something as simple and silly as a sneeze and use it to change everything. That night under the alien stars of Prime, a new era began. And it started with a human who could not stop his nose from tickling. In the years that followed, the Cultural Exchange Center became the most visited place on Prime. Humans came to teach laughter and receive strength, came to learn joy and share their pride. The two species grew together in ways no one had predicted. Became famous throughout the galaxy. He wrote books about cross-species communication. He gave lectures at universities on 100 worlds. He was consulted whenever first contact was made with a new species. But his favorite thing was still the simplest. Every morning when the twin suns rose over the black stone buildings of the capital city, would sit with and drink coffee. They would talk about nothing important. They would share stories. They would laugh. And sometimes, just because it made his friend happy, would reach for the pepper and sneeze. The most mighty weapon, he learned, is not always the one that destroys. Sometimes, the most mighty weapon is just being completely, wonderfully ridiculous. And that is why, across all the stars and all the worlds and all the species in the known universe, humanity earned a special place. Not because they were the strongest, not because they were but because they could make anyone laugh. And in the end, that might be the most powerful thing of all.